guys, welcome back to the cookie jar. Today we are doing the chocolate mint Softies. Now this recipe actually has two separate components to it. It has the cookies themselves and then it has a chocolate buttercream frosting. Now, one of the things I don't like about recipes in general, but mainly in these books, is I go to the recipe section, I make sure I have everything. If I don't know for a fact that it has a separate section of ingredients, sometimes I get caught out a little bit. So with these books, you always have to be very careful to read and look for all of the ingredients before you start. So this is the 7th recipe in Candy for Christmas. There are 2 more for this book before we move on to Strawberry Shortcake Murder. So for the chocolate mint Softies, you do preheat your oven before you get started. You're going to want 2 1-ounce squares of unsweetened baking chocolate, half a cup, that's 1 stick of butter at room temperature, 2/3 cup brown sugar firmly packed, 1/3 cup white granulated sugar, half a teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 large egg, 1 teaspoon peppermint extract, half a teaspoon of chocolate extract. If you can't find it, just use vanilla. I did not find that in any of my local stores, but Amazon did have it. 3/4 of a cup of sour cream, 2 cups of flour, pack it down in the cup when you measure it, 3/4 cup very coarsely chopped pecan pieces. You'll want some big pieces. The first little section, it's got a couple of notes. The first note is mixing this dough is a lot easier with an electric mixer. You can do it by hand, but it'll take some muscle. Oh, for the chocolate buttercream frosting, you will need 2 1-ounce squares unsweetened baking chocolate melted, 1/3 of a cup butter room temperature, 2 cups of powdered confectioner's sugar, 1.5 teaspoons vanilla extract, and approximately 2 tablespoons of cream or milk. The second note is that this frosting is the no-fail type. If it's too thick, add a bit more cream. If it's too thin, add a bit more powdered sugar. And the third note is Lisa says that when she's in a hurry, she doesn't have time to make a frosting. She just sprinkles the cookies with a little powdered sugar while they're still warm. She does a second sprinkling when they're cool and calls it a day. Yields approximately 6 dozen cookies. So the recipe link will be in the description section, as well as where you can buy the book. And let's get to the kitchen and get started. So here are all of our ingredients for this part of the video. What we'll need for the frosting. Okay, so the first thing after you preheat your oven and you get all your ingredients together, it wants you to take your trays, line them with foil, and spray them with a nonstick spray. So after that, you're going to unwrap your 2 ounces of baking chocolate, and it wants you to pop them in the microwave for 90 seconds and then stir them until they're smooth. So after 90 seconds, I had a few little chunks left, but for the most part, it's very liquidy and smooth. But remember, if you put glass in the microwave, it comes out hot. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our stick of butter and mix it with the 2/3 cup of brown sugar and the 1/3 cup of white sugar. And then we're going to mix those together until they are smooth. All right, so I see why it says smooth and not creamy, because this doesn't look creamed at all. It kind of looks like a sugar cookie dough already. All right, so the next thing we're going to add is going to be the 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda with the 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now we are going to mix those in. It says to give it another minute. Well, I'm not sure what happened with the video. but we added in the egg and we got that blended for about a minute. Then we added the peppermint extracts and the chocolate extracts, and we mixed those for about 30 seconds. And then we scraped down the bowl, added in the melted chocolate, and we mixed that for a minute. And then we scraped it down again and added in half of the flour. And then we let that go. And then we added in the sour cream. And we mixed that in until it was good. And then we added in the rest of the flour. And then we are now scooping down the sides of the bowl because we are going to mix the last ingredient, which is the pecans, in by hand before we start plopping them onto our trays. So that is where we are at now. At the moment, it reminds me of a chocolate cake batter. It looks light and airy, but it's kind of thick, which would be good for a cookie. I think this is going to remind me like a German chocolate cookie. It's kind of reminding me of one of those. It's just not going to be topped with the coconut caramelly mix. Now I'm just going to go around the sides and the top and push it all to the bottom. We have our 3/4 cups of coarsely chopped pecan pieces. It's getting mixed in. I'm not sure why it matters if there's some big pieces. They're not going on the top because they're being frosted. I did look, wondering if that was the case. So now we're just going to fold in these pecans. That will give the cookie a nice little crunch. Now, all right, so with these cookies, it's kind of talking about once you bake them, we're going to scoop them all out. Of course, I'm using my normal little scoop. It does say teaspoons, but I like to stick with my 12 cookies to a sheet, of course. It does say if the dough gets really sticky, you can put it in the fridge for half an hour. And then you're going to bake them at 350 for 10 to 12 minutes. And it says, or until they rise and become firm. And then it says to slide the foil from the cookie sheets onto a wire rack. Let them sit there until the next batch is done, and then to pull them off onto the counter or wherever you're going to put them, and you put the next sheet that you slide off onto the cooling rack. And once, of course, they're cooling down and all your cookies are out of the oven, you make your frosting, and then that should give you enough time for everything to cool down before you ice it. So let's get scooping now. So here's our cookie today. So I am going to do it a little bit differently today. I'm going to show you the first set once they're done. And then after that, I'm going to pop them into the fridge. And then I will show them all to you before we start baking. That way we can still get our count, but they're not sitting on the counter melting before we get them in the oven. Now, these do seem softer than what the recipe entailed that they were going to be. It kind of made it seem like they were going to be super hard and firm when they just don't seem that way. Now, she did say that could, you could chill it and everything, but it's not. It seems more a flaw in just the recipe description to me, which I don't know how that's going to affect the cookies after the fact, but we will see. Here is our first tray. Now, as I said, I'm going to pop these in the fridge, and then I'm going to scoop out the rest of the trays, and then I will show them to you all lined up. So we are done scooping. There are 42. There's 3 full trays and a half. So now we're just going to pop these in the oven for probably 12 minutes, and we'll show you when we're done. Here are the baked cookies. And now we're gonna make the icing. So the first thing we're gonna do for the frosting is we're going to melt our 2 ounces of the unsweetened chocolate in the microwave for 90 seconds like we did for the cookies. So now that the chocolate is out of the microwave, I've stirred it smooth. I'm going to pour it into my big bowl that will hold the cream and the butter and the vanilla and the powdered sugar. And it says to let it cool. So I'm gonna give it about 5 minutes before we add the butter. Okay, so it's been a couple of minutes. Now we need to add in the butter, which I chopped up into cubes or slices. And it says to mix this, and then we'll add in the powdered sugar. Now we're going to add in the 2 cups of powdered sugar. And I am already regretting doing this by hand. It doesn't say to use a mixer, and I thought this would be really short, little throw it together, you have icing. I recommend using a mixer, even if it's just a hand mixer. Because this doesn't, honestly, it just doesn't seem like there's enough liquid in here to make a frosting. So I'm kind of worried about that. I broke down, I got the little mixer that could. Well, for something that's supposedly no fail, I don't know how this is working out very well. It now says to add the extract and the cream. And it does say you can keep adding cream till it's a consistency that's right. I have a feeling we'll be adding a lot more cream to this. Let's give it a whirl. Actually, I think this is gonna work. Oh yeah, this will be just fine. Little dollop of icing there. So it just says now that we will spread it on the cookies and leave them until it hardens. Gather a cookie and spread some up there. Doesn't really show up very much. I will frost the rest of them and we'll see them then. Here is a close-up of all of the frosted cookies. So I did end up having a little bit of icing left over. That's probably because I made my cookies bigger than the book recommended, but it could also be because it's just a here's a recipe for icing, put it on your cookies kind of thing. I did finish them off. I will give you an up-close view in a second. It's very brown. Unless, I mean, you kind of smell the peppermint before I iced them. So it's not as strong now that they're iced. Next week, we are doing something called fudgeroons, which sounds to me like it's a chocolate-covered macaroon cookie, which are coconut, I believe.